sandwich on a,
Woohoo.
okay. All right, we're back with Dr. Lori, and we're talking about alternative and non-toxic therapies for healing from cancer. We just sort of wrapped up our conversation about stress and how stress suppresses the immune system and allows tumors to thrive. What we want to do is we start to land the plane here, and we've kind of just topically covered therapies that you should be exploring. But first and foremost, what you should do is contact Dr. Lori at drlori.ca and get a link on her calendar and schedule a call that you can talk with her about what is right for you. Because as we've sort of discovered, this is a little bit different for everyone. Dr. Lori, I wanted to get back into the ACE, the Adverse Childhood Experience Test, and how, I really struggled with this, is that how possibly could what happened to me as a kid have resulted in cancer today? But once I got into the science of it and recognizing that I battled, I'll tell you that I battled for years that I was abused as a kid, verbally, psychologically. My mom didn't lay a hand on me, but she told me that I was worthless every single day of my life. And I just couldn't, like, for me, that moment that I realized that I have been traumatized and I needed to approach that, I cried for like 3 days.
Yeah. Wow.
But it put me on a path. It put me on a path that I'm so grateful to have been on. So talk to us about this very important, the ACE questionnaire. Just talk to us about childhood trauma and trauma as it relates to cancer.
Yeah. And most of us do look at trauma as like, oh, I was in the war field, and that's the only trauma that really resonates with people. But to actually think back of your childhood, did you feel alone? Did you see abuse? Did you feel scared? Did you feel like fear for your life? Like, it's literally can be the way that you're perceiving this environment and this culture, because some people can, like, I mean, your brother or sister, whoever, can be grown up in the same environment, but not interpret it that way. So the trauma is really how you are perceiving it. And if you are perceiving something as going into fear mode, then that is trauma. And that is something that you hold on to. And it's interesting because a lot of people, when they get diagnosed with cancer or when they have a life event that's very pivotal, they go back to these trauma incidents where they just feel like they freeze. They go in this fight or flight or freeze mode. And it's really hard for them to make decisions. And you kind of put in there, like, the medical doctor saying, like, you need to do this and you need to do this or you're going to die. And you go like, okay, I'm going to do whatever it is. A lot of those people haven't dealt with what the trauma was in the beginning and how their body just never really healed from that. So It's really cool to look at that and say, like, you know what, my mom's saying that I'm worthless, or that, like, ignoring me, or the abuse that I saw, or how I felt, like, that is a big deal for people to recognize and say, no, you are worth healing. You are worth it. And whatever they said, it's like, that's them having their own shitty issues and putting that onto you. So it's huge. It's huge, because that mentality of, like, a fighter mentality, and, like, I'm getting through this, I'm going to investigate and research because I'm worth that time, or I'm going to change my diet because I'm worth it. A lot of that stems from early childhood saying, okay, maybe you didn't think you were worth it.
Yeah.
Or you numb yourself out with other things. You don't want to deal with it. And and I'm sure, like, you'll have your good days and your bad days. Like, that's totally healthy and normal too. But if the overall theme is fear, anxiety, and just, like, that comes from how you were raised, the perceptions that were kind of, like, built in, and those reactions built in from a young age.
Man, they're programmed in you. You know what I mean? Like, I am definitely this sort of all-American type of guy where it's like, pull myself up from my own bootstraps, and even in my cancer fight for the first year, it was a warrior mentality. And don't get me wrong, I am a warrior, and I identify with that language, right? But I also noticed that I was constantly saying war, fight, battle, and connecting that to adrenaline and cortisol. And so even though it was like a good fight, I was still fighting. And I got to tell you, it's like Neo in the Matrix when he realized that there is no spoon, like, I mean, it sounds so spacey, but I'll tell you, getting into this place where it's like, I'm healing cancer. versus fighting cancer changed so much. It softened me up. I got into meditations on YouTube that I just ended my day with, like a 15-minute guided, and it wasn't spiritual as much as it was just like teaching you how to breathe, letting you listen to nice music. And then like this stranger pouring into me, like saying, you're worth it, you're valuable. And then taking that into the cancer treatments, right? Because I do treatments. I intravenous vitamin C's and some other things, and going like, I'm here to heal my body because I am valuable. I mean, all of this stuff was extremely valuable. Walk us through like what it looks like to treat that from your perspective, right? As the doctor, like how would you approach that with a patient?
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Cause it is really like changing that mindset, right? I think it was it President Nixon? One of the presidents, like, we're going to get the war on cancer.
As Nixon. Yeah.
Billions, millions, trillions, I don't know how much money. And it's like, where are we now with all that money? Like, what advancements? People are still using the same chemo drugs as they did 20 years ago. So this war mentality has got to go. Like and yeah, you hear that a lot. Hey, it's like, fight back and fight. It's like, no, surrender, just surrender to it, please. Cause your body is not needing more ammo. Like that's not gonna, no, you're not going to come out the hero when you're in this fighting against something of like, why is it there in the first place? Right. So,
right.
Yeah, so I really do look at that as like a huge component. People know that a stressful situation or something that was like they're holding on to really just like tipped them over the edge. So they could have had like toxicity exposures, mold, sugar imbalances, hormone, like gut issues for many years, but they know that their cancer came on after like a major loss or like to say they're going through a lot. Yes. Something where it like really just knocked them off. And it's not saying, oh, that stress caused your cancer. It's really like what we're saying before, the ripple effect of how it affects cortisol, affects your sleep, your diet choices, growth hormones, insulin, like literally it goes way deeper on a physiological level. So personally, I am an open, I want everyone just to tell me how they're feeling, like tell me what's going on, the trauma, like I'm an open ear, whatever that's saying. Like I want to hear it all. But I actually, with the programs that I run, I have other experts who are more like, I don't want to say that I'm not intuitive, but I have people who are really like
That's what they do.
This is what they do. And they help with resetting, like with traumas and grieving and kind of like past life stuff too. Cause you see where there's a lot of things that like their mom was dealing with this thing. And even like through the womb, they've actually had this anxiety stress response where they're like, it's not my stuff. It's someone else's.
Okay. I want to stop right there because I want to just acknowledge how potentially wacko that might sound. But I was in the same place myself. There is a book called It Didn't Start With You, about how trauma is passed from generation to generation. The stress hormones, a woman is born with all the eggs she's ever going to have. Traumatic event affects the body, affects the way those eggs develop, can affect what is expressed inside the womb. Even all of our children were born, my wife's body wouldn't let them go. So they were all C-sections, and we're just conscious of the trauma that may, have caused. And so I just want to acknowledge that you said something so important about that. The trauma and the stress that you're dealing with may not be yours. It might be something that you were kind of born into, and you've got to sort of work through that.
Yes. Cause I do hear that question a lot where they'll say like, there's a childhood cancer, or there is something that like how, if this metabolic approach was real, like I get a lot of like slack online too, not all good things and it's great. Like I want those questions to come up. They say like, well, how come 10-year-olds are diagnosed with cancer? It's like, okay, we need to look at what exposures the mom was getting, like when they were in the womb, and even the mom's mom, like how is the health of the mother and their mother. So it's going 4 generations back. You have to look back at the exposure, even Chernobyl, like the war and the radiation exposure. So thyroid cancer specifically, and just other cancers that, the environment of their parents and grandparents play a huge role. And so you add on that stress, and you add on like not working through these conditions, like they have a much higher risk of cancer.
Yeah. The ACE, I would encourage all of you guys to go to the ACE questionnaire, and the way that questionnaire basically works is that the higher that you rank, right, it's like 10 questions, 10 points. And the higher that you rank, the more likely, the more at risk you are for cancer. I had to take this and I found out that I was like a 6 out of 10 and maybe even bordered on a 7. And really it was the gender of the question, right? Is like, did your dad ever abuse? It's like, so I feel like anti-male. It's like, did a parent ever hit another parent? Because yes, my mom like was always violent with my dad. But my point is that I was higher than I wanted to admit. And then it like all came. It's like, of course I got cancer. I was living this lifestyle. I was eating this garbage food. I was drinking 3 days a week. I hated myself. And like all of these kind of pieces of the puzzle sort of came together. And so this has been a very educational, very informative interview. What I want to do is sort of land the plane here and kind of like bring it into real tactics and sort of like, what is your advice for someone who has just been diagnosed or their caregiver, right? And they're in this place of, I don't know what to do. The doctor wants me here. And, you've been in that mindset a lot. Give us the summary of like, what should be done right now.
Yeah. So you want to reach out to me, just reach out to me. No, reach out to experts in the field who what they do is focus on the whole body and looking at the whole system, not just speaking to one doctor. I think that's where most people go wrong is they just put their whole life and their world in one doctor's opinion. So really collecting resources of different books that you can get, understanding why cancer grows in the first place, what things have, without even knowing, have been in your life. Because a lot of people think like, oh, great, I caused my cancer and it's my fault. And like, this is awful news, but it's like, no, let's look at it as like so empowering. Like if there's a reason why it came, like there's a reason why we can turn it around.
Oh, so good. Cancer's a messenger, right? It's got a message for you. Hey, stop, right? Make some changes. I went through the 3 weeks of depression, guys. I went through like, my life sucks. This is the story of Owen. That's what I kept saying. This is the story of Owen. And then after all that abuse, then Owen got cancer and died. And I just kept telling myself that story. And then one day I was like, forget that, dude. I'm going to beat this. Like I beat everything else in my life. And that began a 2-year journey where I've almost totally reversed my cancer. And I've met so many people along the way who have, I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, beating cancer will be an everyday thing. I believe that chemotherapy will be looked at as a barbaric treatment that we know didn't work effectively for years. And that's, of course, me saying that. That is not the doctor saying that, is my opinion. And everything that we've covered here today is really just a conversation. You need to seek an integrative oncologist or a naturopathic doctor. I highly recommend Dr. Lori at drlori.ca. Set an appointment there and find out if working through her programs is a good fit for you. But if it's not, there are other holistic doctors. There are other naturopaths. I have the oncologist that my insurance pays for, right? And I have to go to her if I want the CT scans paid for. But I also have Dr. Jake, who is he's my Dr. Lori. And I also consult with a third doctor, Dr. Terry Harmon, who will be on the show next month. And I'm sharing my scans with all of them. And we're at the end of the day, I am the CEO of my own health. And I'm able to take what I'm hearing from them, combine it with the books that I've read and the education that I'm doing on myself to make the best decision for me. And I'm in a place where I'm almost totally cancer free. So Dr. Lori, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm actually going to go to the split screen and give you a chance. Last thing, what are the top books you'd recommend for anybody to start reading if they're on this cancer journey?
Yeah, so Dr. Naisha Winters is my mentor. The metabolic approach to cancer really does sum up everything that we've talked about today. Anything fasting, ketogenic for cancer. What else? There's tons out there. Yeah. Thomas Seyfried, like he's amazing. Just looking at the whole body and the process of why it happens. And like you said, being the CEO, like seeing what books resonate with you. Maybe there's, I love Marianne Williamson, A Return to Love. That's a really great one that you can just kind of like hone in on just dealing with certain situations and from a spiritual aspect. But yeah, being the CEO of your own life, because you need to take control and no one else is going to do that for you, and just collecting all the resources. So, Owen, I think think you're amazing. I think you're such an inspiration to everybody. And I am so grateful that you had me on your show. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And there are links in the description box. I'm going to put a link to some show notes here so you can like just have a quick blog if you want to send it to people that you know that are getting diagnosed. And if you yourself are dealing with cancer, go into the description box. Dr. Lori's link will be there. Some of my links will be there. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel at Beat Cancer with Me. We don't upload every day. We're I've got kids, in a life, but we are going to be interviewing some of those who are actually healing people from this terrible disease. And I'll tell you guys, it's once you know how to beat it, it actually becomes pretty easy, pretty automated, pretty just like eat this and not that. And I want that for every single one of you. So Dr. Lori, thank you for your time. Thank you guys for joining us today.